All right, guys, what's going on? Welcome in. In this one, I'm joined by my buddy Kevin, Buffalo Jet fan. What's up, dude?
Ian, glad to be on, man. How's it going?
It's good, dude. It's good. And whenever we're talking Jets, we have to talk about the quarterback position here because it's the offseason and the Jets have a massive question mark here, right? It's unfortunate that Zach Wilson did not pan out, but we're looking ahead. The Jets will be aggressive. Woody Johnson's going to be aggressive, and I'm pumped. So I have a list of the top five, or I guess the top five biggest names that are either on the move, guaranteed, or could be on the move. We'll see. Let's just go down on bullet point by bullet point. First up, Aaron Rodgers. So much buzz surrounding Aaron. Will he retire? Will he want to stick with Green Bay? Will he want to play for a new team? There was a video that I think started floating around like 20 minutes ago of him saying that he's not going to San Fran. He was at like in the middle of like a golf tournament or something like that. But what's your take on Aaron Rodgers?
With Aaron, I think that he's probably at the top of my list, definitely one or two. The with some conditions. Now, the first report of two unconditional first round picks. I don't see Joe Douglas doing that. I don't see any team doing that, quite frankly. I think you have to have a trade where there's some conditions in there if he retires after 1 year. But I think it's worth it. I think that last year he had the broken thumb. And are you getting MVP Aaron Rodgers of like 3 years ago, where it was 70% completions and 40 touchdowns? Probably not. But even if you get the middle of that Aaron Rodgers and last year's Aaron Rodgers with the thumb healed, that's still a top six or so quarterback in the league. And the Jets roster is far from perfect. We understand that they have to retool the offensive line again. They need a safety, they need a linebacker. They got some guys they got to resign. But if you have a top 10 defense and you have a top 10 quarterback, you got a chance to win it all. And I would not completely F them picks mode, but I would mortgage a bit of the future to really have a shot to make a deep playoff run. And Aaron Rodgers gives us the best chance to do that.
For sure. No, I totally agree with you. My only fear with Aaron Rodgers, and we just talked about it on your stream, it's the retirement thing because the last place I want the Jets to be is in this spot next year, right?
Right.
Where let's just say the Jets go out, they trade Aaron Rodgers, they land him, they trade, whatever it is, conditional picks, first round picks, whatever it is, they land him. But then it's like, okay, Rodgers now 41 years old, he wants to retire. And it's like, great, now Aaron's on the hook, his contract's on the hook for multiple years. We've already traded a package and he's gone. And now we're asking the questions, who is it going to be? Zach Wilson? Do we have to trade for another veteran guy? That's my only fear with Aaron. But outside of that, I think it does make a lot of sense when looking at, what the Packers want to do. I think that's kind of another underrated aspect in this, in this whole thing. Jordan Love is ready to go. Multiple years in the system, multiple years sitting behind Aaron Rodgers. They want to get younger, it seems. And I don't know. It's going to be interesting, man. It really is. But outside of Aaron Rodgers, we go down to the second quarterback here. It's Derek Carr, another hot name. In a lot of people's eyes, Derek is above Rodgers. And by the way, these aren't ranked, like these aren't like my top five in any specific order. These are just how I wrote them down here. But where
Right.
do you stand with Derek?
I like Derek a lot. And I have felt the same way about Derek Carr before he was even rumored to go to the Jets, just as a football fan. So if I'm wrong about Derek Carr, I've been wrong for the last 10 years. It's not just recency bias or Jets bias. And I felt that Derek Carr has been a good quarterback, not great, but he's been a good quarterback in a really awful situation. And it's interesting because as Jets fans, it's weird to me how we can argue with on one hand how guys like Sam Darnold, Zach Wilson, maybe would have been great if they had better circumstance. When let's be honest, those guys were bottom 10, bottom five, even Zach last year maybe bottom three quarterback performance in the league. But then we look at a guy like Derek Carr and we see okay, he breaks into the league, like what 23 touchdowns and 12 picks as a rookie. Then he's making Pro Bowls in year two and year three. Year three has his team, screaming towards a 1 seed before he gets hurt. He's 2 years removed from almost a 5,000-yard season. And we look at a guy like that under turmoil, instability, bad head coaches, defense average 26 ranking in the league, bad offensive line, drafting fast wide receivers that can't catch. The one wide receiver he has that, torch the Jets, he's off the field, off the team because of off the field issues, coach getting fired. It just seems like he's been the only thing that has made them relevant and watchable. And in the postseason, the past 10 years, like the only difference between the Raiders and the Jets the last decade is, they had Derek Carr, so they were better than us. And I just don't know how we can say, those quarterbacks that we had, we could have made this hugely, but then we better support them. It's like we'll do the same thing for Carr. I know he's a veteran, but I look at Derek Carr through the lens of, okay, what could he do with a top 5 defense and some stability at head coach? He's not going to be a top 5 quarterback, probably not even a top 10 quarterback. But I think Derek Carr, he's wavered between like the 10th and 18th best quarterback in the NFL. And it gives you some stability. He never misses games, which is, when's the last time we had a quarterback who played a full season? There's a lot to like about Derek Carr. I would firmly put him right as my second option if we can't get Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, no, I'm totally with you. I've been posting like a lot lately about Derek Carr, specifically about him. And it's fair to say that not everybody is on board, and that's totally fine, right? If you prefer Rodgers, if you prefer whoever, Jimmy Garoppolo, Lamar Jackson, if he doesn't sign his extension, that's totally fine. But personally, man, I'm with you. I love Derek Carr. He's consistent. He's really, again, he's been the only consistent thing that the Raiders have had. He's had success with multiple head coaches in multiple schemes. He's been durable. He doesn't miss time. He's dealt with a ton off the field with the adversity, with so many different aspects, moving from Oakland to Vegas, the Henry Ruggs thing, John Gruden thing, Damon Arnett thing. I mean, yes, he does have weapons, and that's totally valid, right? Waller, top one of the best tight ends in football. Adams, arguably the best wide receiver. Josh Jacobs, I know he's a free agent now, but I mean, the guy's a really good running back. And then I don't want to say throughout the course of his entire career, but for the majority of it, he's had a solid offensive line. Like, there were a couple years in the John Gruden era where that Raiders offensive line was stacked. So he has dealt with some pretty good offenses around him, but like you said, the defenses have just been absolutely horrible in numerous metrics: turnovers, sacks, yardage, pretty much every area that you can think of, they've probably struggled in, if not multiple categories struggled in throughout Derek's career there. He's never had that top 5 defense. Never. And the second he would be, wearing green and white for the Jets next season, that would be the best defense that he's ever had, assuming they look somewhat the same as last year. So I would be a massive fan of Derek Carr. Obviously the compensation isn't going to be as high as an Aaron Rodgers, maybe a 3rd round pick. If you want to trade for him, you can wait for him to get released and then sign him to a multi-year deal. He's younger than Aaron. So I think, although there are some negatives and cons with Derek, might not be a top 5 guy. And the whole cold weather thing as well. I think there's a ton of positives, ton of pros that kind of outweigh the cons, but that's just me. Moving on to Jimmy Garoppolo, though, where do you stand with him?
So Jimmy G, he's honestly pretty far down on, like, I think maybe he's the 3rd best, but I think it's a pretty big gap between Rodgers and Carr for me, and then it's another pretty big gap between Carr and Jimmy G, just because I think Carr and Jimmy G are guys of similar talent level, but the durability factor is just so huge to me. Jimmy G, now the pros are that he's a complete free agent. So unlike Carr or Rodgers, maybe you don't, as it stands right now, you wouldn't have to trade anything to get him. I also think you could probably get him cheaper than Carr, and maybe for a shorter term commitment. Like, would Jimmy G sign a 1 or 2 year deal? Yes. If Derek Carr is released, he's going to get a 4-year contract from somebody. So there's that. But he misses. It's like every other year he's out for like half or more of the season. So, and he's not getting any younger, and he's going to get hit more probably behind our offensive line. Even if we
Yeah.
retool it, it's probably not going to be as good as San Francisco's offensive line. And I hate to hold it against a guy for playing on a good team, but and you watch a 7th round rookie go in there and the offense gets better than it was with Jimmy G. It kind of just makes you squint a little bit. But if Jimmy G, he probably has the 3rd best resume of the quarterbacks that are reported to be available, if we're assuming Lamar Jackson's in Baltimore, which I'm kind of assuming at this point. But then you have to ask yourself, if we miss out on Carr, we miss out on Rodgers, would I rather have like 9 or 10 games of Jimmy G or 17 games of like Jacoby Brissett, which I know you say that name and you're like, oh my gosh, really? That's where we're going. But you really have to ask yourself the durability factor. Then if Jimmy G is your quarterback, who's your backup? Because your backup's going to be playing a lot. So now you have to invest money in a good backup. And so I think that I would be I'd be pretty disappointed if it got down to Jimmy G. It feel like we settled a little bit. Although I like him, good player, just the durability for me.
Yeah, for me, he's definitely number three on my list, behind again Carr and Rodgers. Just because when I do look at the pros, the upside with Jimmy, he's tight with Salah. He knows the West Coast scheme here. He has a ton of experience, not only just in the regular season, but also in the playoffs. I think he would come in and pick up the Hackett system, no problem whatsoever. Do really, really good things within the pocket. The quick release, spraying the football around to the playmakers. And Jimmy G is a great teammate. That's something too that I feel like doesn't get talked about enough. Like the players love Garoppolo. Whether you
Yep.
want to talk about New England, San Francisco, everybody seems to gravitate towards Jimmy. Nobody ever has a bad thing to say about him. And I think that's kind of what the Jets need right now. Like somebody who's going to come in and unite the locker room as opposed to like point fingers, be a diva, that kind of thing. I don't want to see another Zach Wilson. No, I don't have anything to do with, the reason why we lost. Like, I don't want to see press conferences like that in 2023. But again, the durability, it's a major, major question mark. Outside of Jimmy, though, we move down the list. Baker Mayfield, where do you stand with him?
Oh geez. You know what? I loved him as a prospect. I was hoping that the Jets were going to draft him at 3 when they traded up, but obviously he was never on the board. Cleveland got him at 1. He's got some talent. I know a lot of people don't like his personality. I don't mind him a ton. I kind of like him. I think he's got some moxie. I think he still carries that transfer, whatever. He had a untraditional road to the non-traditional road to the NFL. So I don't mind Baker. I just think that once we're there, it's just another step down. And he's had injuries, he's had inconsistency. I know he was really bad in Carolina, and then he caught on with the Rams and actually played pretty well. So I like Baker on another team. I'll root for him. I don't particularly want him on the Jets. If it was for a backup role, then sure. Or maybe if we had if Zach Wilson and if it came down to he was looking a little better and you wanted someone to compete with, but I just don't think he's the kind of guy that you bring in and say for sure he's our starter for 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, I mean, what's kind of crazy about this whole thing, as much as as exciting as it is to talk about Aaron Rodgers and Carr, all these different possibilities for the Jets. There's also a bunch of teams that need quarterbacks as well. Carolina, Tampa Bay. Now, I mean, we could go down the list. There's like I want to say 5, 6 teams that have like a glaring issue at quarterback. So as much as I want the Jets to go land their first option and not settle for plan D, and Baker Mayfield probably isn't going to be team's number one, number one plan A. When comparing him to, guys like Rodgers and Carr here. But I think Mayfield, I would like him on the field because I still think Mayfield could throw darts. He could extend plays. Like I think he's super fun to watch. And I do think he would fit this offensive system pretty well. But it's just like the off the field stuff, compared to Jimmy, compared to Derek Carr. I just don't know if things start to go south. Will he get a little like testy with the media? Will Twitter be an issue, that kind of thing? Like the off the field stuff has always kind of been there for Mayfield, and that's really my only concern. But I mean, he would be cheap, which is a pro. So if the Jets miss out on these guys, Carr goes to wherever, Carolina, Rodgers gets traded to the Raiders, and the Jimmy's gone. Now I'm looking at other guys. Baker definitely could be an option. But moving on, Ryan Tannehill, last quarterback on the list. Where do you stand with him?
You know what? Probably I don't have that same. I feel like you bring up that name to Jets fan. It's like people start just vomiting like in the street, like passing out.
Yeah, yeah,
Like,
yeah.
and I'm like, I don't really know. Like to me, I don't know if Ryan Tannehill is that much worse than Jimmy G. Like I understand that if we get, I'm not sprinting out to get my Ryan Tannehill jersey. I understand that. He's down on the list for sure, but I would put him right in that same tier as Jimmy G, and he's 2 years removed from, I think it was like a 33 touchdown, 7 interception season. Other until recently he's been fairly durable. He's got some playoff experience. Now his best success did come with, I mean, at the time Tennessee had a good offensive line, the best running back in the league at the time, Derrick Henry, a near 2,000-yard threat. And then he had, AJ Brown and Corey Davis. So it was a pretty stacked team that he did it with, but I think he's all right. I think you could throw him in there right on the same tier as Jimmy G if we don't get our first two options. But I think he's older. He's like 34,
Yep.
35. So yeah, we're not excited if we get Ryan Tannehill, but I do think it's I don't think he's like the worst quarterback ever. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think it's a
yeah.
little overstated that that would be like, the worst thing in the world. I think he's all right, but again, I'd put him in plan C.
Okay, got you. So it's kind of like tier one, Derek Carr, Aaron Rodgers, tier two, Jimmy G, Tannehill, and then Baker kind of in that last spot. Just I know whatever I said Tannehill was the last guy, but just to kind of get a little bit of context, where do you stand with Mike White? What tier would he fall in? Tier three automatically, or maybe tier two?
I think he'd be in tier three. Now with Mike, I like Mike White a lot. Now there's plenty of quarterbacks who have had way more talent than Mike White and have never made it as far as he has in the NFL in terms of just having a role on a team. I think he plays with a high football IQ. I think his teammates clearly respect him. I think he's tough as hell coming back into the Buffalo game and even playing in Seattle with like 4 broken ribs or whatever. You could just see why coaching staffs and players would love Mike White. But he has left about half of his games due to injury. I'm not going to say he's fragile. He's tough. I don't know, but you have to factor that in. And there's a limited sample size, and some of it's been really good, some of it's been okay, and some of it's been pretty bad. So I would like Mike White as a backup, but I don't think you can really have it like, okay, I don't think he's good enough to where you say, okay, it's like Mike White and Zach Wilson or Mike White and Baker Mayfield. I think that he's definitely got to be the backup, and you have to bring somebody in who's more proven. I think this year has too much urgency to risk it on Mike White with his limited sample size and the fact that he does seem to get hurt more than you'd like.
Yeah, no, I'm right there with you. I totally agree. I think Mike is honestly probably like the perfect backup, right? Somebody
Mm-hmm.
who's going to support the team, support the starter, come in and win games if the starter goes down, because you don't feel like the game is lost when Mike White is out there. Like, oh, game over, right? Starter goes down, Mike White has to play. It's a wrap. Like, let's not even roll out there. I don't get that sense whatsoever. I would say White, in all honesty, is probably a top three to top four backup quarterback in football. When you need him to play, he can go out there and rip off 300 yards. We all saw the 400-yard performance against the Bengals, but like you said, the coaches love him, players love him, supports the starter. He's not going to rock the boat or be cryptic with the media, cryptic on like social media or anything like that. But again, I just don't view him as like a long-term starter for the New York Jets. But Kevin, I appreciate you taking the time to hop on.
Hell yeah, man! Anytime, Ian. It's gonna be a really fun off season. I can't wait till that tweet hits of who our
Yeah, I
quarterback is.
know.
But
I
you know what's
know.
not gonna happen, Ian? No one's gonna argue in this fan base. Everyone is gonna be united, no matter who it is. If we don't get our favorite guy, no one's gonna be angry. No one's gonna call anyone any names. We're gonna sing "Kumbaya" and welcome our new quarterback in with open arms. Right?
I can't wait for it, man. Dude, like when that tweet drops, like
Be a
about to get
race
on with
to
the.
me or you who can upload it first.
I know, right? I know. But I appreciate you hopping on, man. Thanks.
Take care.